going to be talking about along the way about the top 10 ways to get the best sex. And it starts with realizing that and this is directed towards the man whose intention is to be a masculine and heterosexual man, and not because obviously the heterosexual you can't influence, but your orientation, but you can choose to be more masculine or feminine, and there may be some ways that you're unconsciously operating more in the feminine, and I'm really of marriage. It's going to be, how do you have the best sex with your spouse? But there's a lot of things I'm about to share that I don't think you have considered before. So let's start with something you've probably never heard before, which is that life as a man is about being stoic. It's not about getting hyped up about stuff. It's not about trying to desperately pursue, the quote unquote most pleasurable sex that you could find, or the most optimally fitting sex organs, or the most the strongest drugs. Like, all that is like a drug. It's like, well, what do you need? A drug that's 70% pleasurable. Do you now need a drug that's like 75% or 80% pleasurable? You see what I mean? It's a downward spiral, and it's not oriented around goddess V, vulva. That's what will bring you peace. Not buying the newest piece of clothing or car to try to get people to like you or get their attention. No, that's feminine, and it's childish to want all that attention. Even when it comes to your own body and sexuality, like, it's not masculine to show off the body and take either shirtless pictures or trying to look sexy, or there's this trend of guys wearing short shorts. It seems to me like it's feminine, and you got guys who are both doing that, and then it's like the whole objective should be to orient life around the masculine, or the feminine, around the woman, and that means her getting the attention, her getting the compliments, stuff like complimenting her vulva, and so that I'll make that the first point, which is the best sex isn't paradoxically not the best sex, because it's not about getting the most pleasure. It's about finding someone who has the same values as you and pleasuring them. So obviously you could possibly find a woman who would it might feel physically better, so it's but then it's going to make you feel badly and like feminine and not masculine, and kind of like a lot of I notice some guys, what they'll do is they'll kind of orient themselves around the woman wanting their pee-pee, or wanting their body, or their their physical appearances, like their face, and this is it's totally feminine. It's not. So in other words, it's and then maybe point number two, let me make it like one directed for the woman. Like, well, point number two, actually, I'll make about it's masturbation. It's like you should be able to pleasure yourself, and you should pleasure yourself, both the man and woman, before marriage. And you can use toys and pornography to enhance it. And it should really feel like something you look forward to every day, and having sex with yourself. Guys can do it as well. There's Doc Johnson personal stroker devices, very realistic. Use olive oil, don't use these other oils. So that's great sex. But number three, I'll direct it towards the woman. So what women have is they have they have disproportionately larger internal vaginas compared to most men's penises. So because of that, there may be an interest in having a larger PPS. And it's kind of like the richer man gets to more selection of what kind of woman or what kind of body type of a woman he might want. But the thing is when you start calculating all these things in, like it's just not interesting to me. It's not interesting to me for a woman to want, it's like you deserve what you want, but as long as it stays in the private sphere. Like, the only contention I have with people, or like especially when talk about other people's body type, like this size breasts or PP, like people can do that. But what's going on here? Oh. But the trouble is when you talk about it out loud, it's like saying your other person. So like I was saying, it's not appropriate when you talk about personal information out loud, because it wants to hear it. And when people do that type of thing, or they make sexually inappropriate jokes, or like make fun of like maybe a guy's like inability to his lack of virility, or a woman's breast size or man's PP size, what it really indicates is that person is unhappy, and also that they're not worshiping. And part of it's because they're not worshiping Goddess V, or even worse, their husband is not worshiping Goddess V, and he's not orienting his life around her vulva, his wife's vulva, because nothing's more attractive. I'm sure every guy would agree. And because as a result of that, people need to choose. People need to choose what they're going to be. What's the right play for them. And so so part of this is about transcending envy of, well, people have different bodies and different body features, but it's all right as long as you don't aren't talking about it, or like wearing overly tight clothing to show off. Especially, I think guys wearing to show off their PP, or women gals wearing something to show off their if they have larger breasts. Like it's not. It's very antisocial, and so that being said, and in the same way. The thing is that basically think about sex, you might think about porn stars, but look at even the language of it. Is it such a good thing to like you really have to ask yourself, would you want to be that person or gal in that situation? My response would be no, you wouldn't, because it's unloving, and it's temporal, and it's unclean, and all it is saying that it's also affecting the trust you have with yourself, because it's saying that just because you're physically aroused by someone, that they basically have control over you, or that they have a right to, to have access to your personal energy and your body. And also it's brief, and it's a tease. And also if it's really pleasurable, then you'll think about that. You'll think about that man or woman in the future. So the way you create being able to have good sex is by making it only one person, and then really learning about who you are, and also things like who you think you could be, who you think you could find attractive, and be realistic about who's attractive to you. Because here's another point. Point number 4 is the best sex is going to be with someone who's realistically like you, like they have a similar health span. And by the way, health is a factor. Think about it. You'd rather be with, say, a woman who's maybe not your type versus a woman who's 20 years older or 30 years older and is your type. You know what I mean? Like, just from a pure physical standpoint. And so you put all that together, and you realize that, if someone is, you wouldn't want to, and you wouldn't want to tease yourself. You wouldn't want to be like it's just all these words, like a guy having success with women. This will be point number 5. It's not really success, because he's neglecting his wife. He's interacting with women who he doesn't really care about, because if he really cared about them, he wouldn't seduce them for premarital sex. And so then the next question is point number 6 is, like, if you think, what would be the best kind of sex for, what do you think is the best sex? Is it anal sex? Is it having intercourse with the man in a more dominant, or the woman in a more dominant? Is it giving or receiving oral sex? I would say that it's definitely giving oral sex to the woman. Because if there's only one act you could engage in, that would be the act, because it's transcendental of the the orgasm. The orgasm is not you. The desire to get off is not you. So the question is you, and I would say giving oral sex to your wife is like a way of, you know, showing that you know, you a way of showing that you are, you know, you care. Or like you know, you are caring about like the real, you know, being human, instead of just, you know, being a biological creature that relies on its desire to get off, then to procreate. So like we are the vulva flower. That's what we are. And it's really important to not be worried about what women think of you in this regard, because you want people to, you know, you worship God as V. Like what the mistake people make is thinking that when I say I worship God as V, is that I'm like either desperate for a woman, or I'm like you know, it's about my wife. It's not about her per se. Like it is, because that's the conduit that I worship God as V. But it's really about vulva itself. It's like that's our collective human flower. So this whole best sex thing, I would say, wanting that is a feminine thing. Wanting attention from women is a feminine thing. Wanting women to think you're in bed is a feminine thing, because it's all like attention to men. Just like how women show off breasts, that's or their body or their ass. That's a feminine thing, to want that sexual energy directed at you. So as a man, if you want that, then that's, I'm not saying it's good or bad, but I am saying that it's feminine. Like you shouldn't want that sense of empowerment, like I'm attractive enough, or I'm, you know, worthy from a woman. Like you should get all of that from your worship of your higher power, or your, you know, you know, the energy you get from accomplishment from your work. So it's a paradox, right? Because it's really the best sex you can have is not really, I'm saying it's not really what you want. You know, you don't want, you know, would you rather have your wife, or would you rather have, you know, have sex with like 100 women until you find one that seems to be the most, you know, sexually compatible, or somehow, but I mean, you should actually vie for that. That should be a goal. But like, especially when it comes to frequency of sex, like some people want to get off only once a day, some people want more, some people want less, like maybe only a few times a week is what they want. So you got to set up your life to accommodate that. If you have children and you still want to have sex once a day, you need to make sure that you can have some people, watching your kids for, a period in time. All right, so what do we got here, boys? What do we got? Well, okay, so how to have the best sex. It's funny, even when women with these big, these bigger peepee, like pornography guys, which is, by the way, is prostitution. It's like it is prostitution. It just looks like it's not because it's glamorous, like on film. They also end up stimulating their clitoris with digital stimulation or using the hands. So it's kind of interesting, right? But it doesn't. I mean, it's still. The reality is still such that. All right, this guy is slowing me down. I need to find a way to navigate here. Let me think. Calculating the trajectory. Firing. Yeah. Yeah. The reality is that when you have people, the reality is the best sex is only a sex that's sustainable, and the only thing that's sustainable. Sometimes women don't want sex because their internal vagina hurts, but you can always give them oral sex, right? And so it's just the way. It's what you have to be into. There's no way to explain it. You just have to commit to it and get used to it. It's part of reality. It's like the best thing in reality is giving a woman oral sex, because it's transcending. Can you look at her and say yes or no, I'd want to give her oral sex? Like, I can look at certain women and say yes, I would. It's part of it's like I like their skin tone. I like their ethnicity, right? So and again, there's no need to be envious of say guys who you refer to as successful with women, because it's really not successful. It's really unloving. It's really empty. It's really neglectful of their actual wife. It's not in truth and love. And so that's where I'm going with it, guys. I'm transcending it. I'm transcending to a higher level of consciousness. We got this. You know, we got this, boys. You know, this is transcending everything. It's transcending, the need for always wanting to have the nicest car, for everyone to like you, for like, what is that like? Another thing is, it's like, don't want to be with a person who's not attracted to you. So you might think the best sex is like picking someone you think is like a 10 out of 10 like celebrity model, or yeah. Another funny thing is that when you really think about it, people always assume that everyone's on their phone when you're driving. That's a good safety measure. Also, always assume that women are mentally distraught. They have their periods and it's harder for them, and we need to support them and not act like they're not having more emotionally oriented thought process, which is unsafe. You got to think, well, what would that woman like that you're sexually attracted to? What would they look like in 30 years? That's why I don't like breasts, larger breasts. I like a flat chest because it's indicative of it's indicative of nothing that will sag, right? And but the reality is, guys, in order for guys to last, they need to learn how to have sex with themselves and be able to not, have a premature orgasm, because then the sex is over, But yeah, you really want to talk about these things with someone, and you don't have to go on dates, but do talk about them in like the privacy of your home, because that'll help you. Yeah, that's going to help you So all this is about clarity. It's about consciousness and clarity, and about having more to life than just these routine, like, sexual things, and like which person can you attract. Like, whoa, right. Somebody traveling too slow for the highway over here. That's all. It's just as dangerous for somebody to be traveling too slowly as it is traveling too fast. Well, what do you say, guys? I say we wrap the stream up. I think I've covered enough points to make it, 10 ways to be, have the great sex that that is a good driver. It's a good motivator. But yeah, let's wrap up, boys, and thank you for being present here. So, top 10 ways to have the greatest sex. Paradoxically, number one is it's not even sex. It's actually oral sex on your wife. That's worshiping Goddess V, and it's not having sex with the physically best person physically you could find attractive, because then that leaves you not being able to sustainably have good sex. It should be someone who's of mutual attraction and a similar age, at lifespan potential, and then so. So yeah, that's kind of what we're dealing with, you guys. And then I'll have to review this video for some key points that I've presented. But yeah, basically, the best sex, it's got to be someone have some degree of sexual compatibility with. Because if you don't, then you won't be able to have sex, and you won't be able to have sex at the frequency that you both prefer. So these are things not to be assumed. You can determine them when you have private conversations over email. It shouldn't be a date, because date is when you publicly present yourselves to the public, like we're together. How the fuck else do you think people think marriage? I mean, marriage is only one aspect of it, and sometimes see, here's the problem with legal marriage, and I've been debating about this, is when you get married, it gives the woman financial power and authority. And women, it's harder for them to deal with it because they're more emotional and they make less logical decisions. And sometimes they have a hard time making decisions. And that's because their mind is designed to deal with raising children, which is young children which cry, which is like an irrational experience. Just like having a baby, growing in you is difficult to even conceive. But that's all conversations for a future show. Let's go ahead and let's talk more. In the future. Aloha, guys.